season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
And here we go.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on episode 27 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network. My name's Kyle Sutherland alongside Kevin Bohonnon. I pretty much did forget to unmute my mic at this, but I think I caught myself right before. So we're already starting off strong again. But it is week 0 of the football season, the 2024 football season. Finally, it is time to put up or shut up. There is no more benefit games, none of that. It is real football this week. We've got the Salt Bowl, of course, on Friday. It's a little bit different than what we're normally accustomed to. But, Kevin, we've been talking about it all this time. Now it is time to play a full 4 quarters with your starters and see what everybody is about here in the early parts of the season.
Yeah, it's always the dog days of August, back in 2 days, 3 days, whatever have you, back in the glory days of 1998 and 2002. So, yeah, it's time to beat up on somebody else besides your own team. I know, as a coach, this was always fun because, it's the start of fall, the boys of fall, all that good stuff, but it's still hot out there. It's going to be 95, 96 on turf. It's going to be 130 on Friday. So, hydrate, take care of yourself, and a lot of great games to talk about this week.
And last week we previewed Class 2A through 7A, all of the classifications there. And this week we're going to talk about some of the top matchups for week 0, as well as go into a little bit of some of the top non-conference matchups, as we'll have those. We'll have them a little bit kind of, especially with, some of the way that things go now with the 8-man ranks and some of the conferences being smaller. You'll have some non-conference games a little bit throughout the season. But as it stands, most of those are going to be through the first 3 weeks. So we're going to break down those. Before we get started on that, I do want to remind everybody, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed. Also hit that bell so that way you're notified when we release an episode. And also make sure you subscribe to any of the audio forums. Most use Apple or Spotify. We're also on iHeartRadio or anywhere you listen to podcasts. So let's get into it. Kevin, we got a little bit different layout this week. Thanks to our man, Will Watkins. We got a little bit of let me find it here. I'm still trying to get used to it. We got a little bit of the PTI rundown action. So this is how we're going to do it here, what way that not only you and I, but also our audience can kind of see some of the games. They can see the ones that we're going to talk about, as well as the one that we are talking about at that moment. So we'll start it off with, of course, none other than the Salt Bowl. I know that, look, it's been Bryant dominated for the last 20 years, save for the tie in 2014. But I believe, Kevin, that pretty much nobody that is on Benton's roster was alive the last time, minus the coaches, of course, was alive the last time that Benton beat Bryant in this game. This is the 50th meeting, I believe it is, between the two, and then the 25th edition of the Salt Bowl, as we know it, that's held at War Memorial Stadium. So, I think that most people just expect it to be a Bryant just domination again. That's kind of, again, as I mentioned just a second ago, how it's been. But I think we tend to forget this was a 7-6 ball game at halftime last year. Last year was last year, and this year is this year. But before Braylon, it was really running. Both running games were dominating. Jordan Walker at quarterback was having a great game for Bryant. Braylon Russell was really running through that Bryant defense. So really once Benton's players, once their top players kind of started going down, that's when Bryant ran away with it. So this year, who knows, will they feed off of that and take it a full 4 quarters and finish that off? Or will it be Bryant just continuously doing what they always do in this game, or at least have the past 2 decades?
Yeah, and it would have been interesting to see these two match up in like week 6 or 7 last year, with the way Drew Davis was throwing the ball up and down the field. Elias Payne, they had so many weapons out there. So Coach Harris, the starting quarterback situation was up in the air, really, so to speak, last year. He had to, kind of go with the hand he was dealt. It's different this year. So the good thing is you got 2 really good quarterbacks. Jordan Walker, of course, coming back for his 3rd year as a starter. Yeah, we talked about it before. He mixed some time with Gideon Moats his sophomore year. But, the running games are the difference this year. Braylon Russell's gone from Benton. They will have a kind of running back by committee. But, with Bryant, they still got the same 2 or 3 guys back there, and they're all – you look at the Bryant stats and the way they split up the carries, they're all right at almost 1,000 yards, and they're still averaging 7-8 yards a carry. So it's going to be really interesting to see. While I was talking, Matt Snyder corrected me, and I don't know Matt, but appreciate it. We were talking about the last time that the Salt Bowl was on campus, and this is the 25th edition. I went to the first one, and I was trying to remember because it was my freshman year of college. We were off that weekend. I came home to see my parents, and a buddy of mine from Bryant said, "Hey, let's go to the Salt Bowl." And I'm like, "What's the Salt Bowl?" And they're like, "Benton Bryant." Okay, cool. So we went to Bryant that year, and it was like we were the last 2 in the stadium. I mean, it was just packed. So now the last time the Salt Bowl was 03, was on campus at Benton. It was a tie that year. And the last time that these two played on campus was 05 in the playoffs. So a little bit of history lesson there, thanks to Matt Snyder. But yeah, should be a good game. I expect Bryant. I think I picked Bryant by 6 or 7 points.
Yeah, Matt Snyder, great dude. He's actually he's been around everywhere in Saline County. I said went to Bryan, obviously has that ties with Benton and Bryan, now helps with Bauxite. So yeah, definitely been around Saline County for a while. So appreciate Matt on that. And then also too, Robinson at PA. Now, Kevin, I've covered this game since 2020 every year because that's been my tradition. Friday night, go cover this game. Saturday, do the Salt Bowl. Well, this year, since the Salt Bowl's on a Friday, I won't get to see that in person at least. But talking about a one-way street in the Salt Bowl, it's been all Bryant. In this series, not only has PA won every matchup, they pretty much dominated every matchup. I think I know 2 of the 4 matchups have gone in that were mercy rules. I believe it was actually 3. Last year, Patton Wicker was the 3rd-string quarterback, ended up playing a great game due to injuries there. But Robinson, we talked about last week, they're a team in 5A that you definitely don't want to sleep on. They're coming off an up-and-down season. This might be the year that they get I'm not predicting anything, but I do think that they are as well equipped to match up with PA as they probably have been in this entire series.
Yeah, you got what will be a 2-headed monster back there with Tyson Braden and Nick Abrams in the backfield for Robinson. I think that's going to be really good. Brandon Cobb comes back at quarterback for PA. I didn't play with John Mark Charette last year. He was, out for most of the year. I think he played 3 or 4 games. So
he played in the Robinson game and was hurt.
Played in the Robinson game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, after I think it was 37-13 last year. So not a close game, but Coach Escola is expecting his team to come out and win this year. I know they expect to come out and win every year. But this year they feel that they're a little bit closer than what they have been in the past. And I think it'll be a really good game. Could be high scoring. We expect that, especially PA games. We've seen some of their non-conference games in the past. I think Harbor, it was like 88-60 something. It's crazy scores. So, I don't expect anything that high scoring, but it could be, get up there in the high 40s, low 50s.
Greenwood at Bentonville West. Let's talk about this one for a second. You mentioned that Bentonville West, I see you laughing there. Yes, I forgot to unmute my mic again. The Bentonville West Wolverines. Interesting case here because look, they're still a really young program, not even been around for 10 years yet. I think this is their 8th season, if I'm not mistaken, or 9th. So you've got a team that does have to replace them, especially at quarterback. And who is it that's going to play?
Trey Thompson.
Trey Thompson that's going to be their new quarterback, the junior. And so you mentioned them as the sleeper, definitely probably going to compete for one of those top 3 spots in the 7A West. But then you go up against Greenwood that we also discussed last week is arguably the top team in the state, regardless of classification. So definitely going to be a great test for both teams. But I think Bentonville West certainly probably has a little bit more to prove.
Yeah, and I was laughing, not to mute, but I was laughing at, we're talking about Greenwood. So Greenwood always really kind of gets some publicity and gets some comments and everything. And us talking about, look, who's the top team in the state? Look, okay, so you and I can both agree, look, Greenwood is in that conversation along with Parkview. It's really those 2 teams. I think it comes down to the lines in the trenches right there. You got O-line, D-line. And, seeing – last week in the scrimmages, you can't really get a whole lot, but you can kind of get a little bit. Parkview really kind of struggled to move the ball vertically down the field. They got the athletes in space, so they're going to take care of business. They beat Catholic, I think, 34-6. Greenwood played a half against Fayetteville, but the quarterbacks were off limits. They had the padded helmets on. You really couldn't see. But towards the end of the first half, Cash Archer really got a good hit on a Fayetteville wide receiver. They ran a little tunnel screen out there, and Archer came on the backside from his defensive end position, ran the wide receiver down. It was really very good athletic play by Archer. So, yeah, what will Bentonville West offense look like without Casey back there, quarterback? I think it's going to be a little bit more dual threat from Thompson back there, and it's going to be a little bit more wide open. They have 7 other starters back on offense, 5 on defense. So Greenwood, it's going to be a closer game. I think it'll probably be close for a half. Greenway pulls away late. 14 to 21 point spread is not uncommon for Greenwood playing these 7A West schools, but it should be a good matchup and a good litmus test because Greenwood's going to have to load up the first part of their schedule because it's not going to be as tough in conference this season.
And we're going to talk about we'll talk about these next 3 kind of a little bit of a bunch together. The next 3 I couldn't count there. I was thinking I was including Arkadelphia and Camden Fairview, but Whitehall, Sheridan, Marion, Wynn, Searcy, Batesville. Maybe other than Marion, on paper these are not none of these are state title contenders. Again, on paper going into the season. So we'll bunch all these together here. Whitehall at Sheridan's interesting. That battle, that rivalry game, because you've got 2 teams that are definitely in rebuilding processes, but are now led by some of the best coaches that have ever coached here. You've got Darrell Patton at Whitehall that won 4 state titles at Fayetteville. We all know what Kevin Kelly did at Pulaski Academy, winning 9 state titles. So that's going to be interesting. You definitely know that you're going to get 100% effort from the beginning until the end. So that's one thing that we definitely know about that game. Marion at Wynn. Wynn's kind of had the upper hand in this one, Kevin. I know 2021, I think Wynn actually won by forfeit. Last year, Marion ran away with it. Yeah, forfeit in 2021. Then last year, Marion kind of ran away with it. It was like 27-7. But for the most part, Wynn has definitely competed, whether they've won or lost. So interesting in that one. And then also Searcy at Batesville is an interesting one as well, because you've got Searcy that is in the 5A Central. They bumped down, and Batesville, of course, is in the East. So Batesville coming off a 3-7 season, and Searcy feels like they've got a really good team. They're replacing a 2-year starter. I think is a 2-year starter. Strickland was at quarterback. So, they're definitely got some pieces to replace there at Searcy, but Coach Clark really feels good about what he has. So, just give me a little bit of your breakdown of each of these 3 games.
Yeah, and we'll start out with the Battle of Highway 270. It's going to be interesting. Isaiah Stevens scored 4 touchdowns against Malvern last week in the 49-20, what it was at halftime, over Malvern. And Malvern's not the team they were in the past. Coach Fogelman's going to have a good ball club, and they'll compete in the 7-4A, but they're not, a 5A, 6A school anymore. Malvern used to be one of in the top 2 or 3 top 2 classifications in the state, but the enrollment has just gone down. It hasn't grown as much as some of these other smaller towns like a Sheridan, like a Whitehall. So what Whitehall looks under Coach Patton is, what Coach Patton wants is to build where Coach Bowling was when they got to the state finals and lost to PA. Very close game, very hard-nosed. So Coach Patton knows how to get to a title game. He's been there before, and, started at Bryant, and he took them in 2000 to what it was then. It was a 5A South championship. So he knows how to win at every school he's been at. He's won. Sans Little Rock Southwest. That's a different situation. So it should be a really good matchup. New eras at both schools. Marion and Wynn. These 2 really have flip-flopped, Kyle, thinking about it. Wynn was always the bigger school, but now Marion is in Class 6A. They've got more kids. They've got a bigger school, and they're the team kind of in eastern Arkansas, south of the Jonesboro area, that every kid goes to play sports. Used to be West Memphis in the 80s and 90s with some of their really good players that had come through in every sport. They've had guys drafted into the professional ranks in all 3 major sports from the 80s and 90s. And even some in the 2000s. But now all those kids go to Marion. So the tides have really kind of changed in how it looks. But, you said, it was 27-7 last year. That was the first game of the year after everything that Coach Toddy and Wynn had went through in the offseason. So they're going to be a little bit better this year, a little bit more prepared. And I think it'll be a closer game. I still think Marion pulls it out. They've got the athletes. Coach Clark's team is going to be really good, especially with Smith at running back. So expect a really competitive game there. And then Searcy and Batesville, these teams have always played each other. So it's a matter of, hey, should they be in the same conference in 5A? Probably, but it's not the way the AAA has the lines drawn. So the key in this game could be Jackson Elam. When you can hit from 60 yards out, he did in practice the other day. We saw it. So if it comes down to special teams, you got to give the edge to Batesville. So Searcy dropping down, I think, is going to help them. They're going to win more games than what they did in the 6A East the last few years. It should be a really good matchup.
I want to touch on Jackson because I noticed that after we had done our preview, or actually at media days as well, I'd asked about Coach Holmes that was there representing Batesville about just every player except for Jackson, I think is what I didn't touch on. And we just had Kyle Ferry, who is arguably the greatest kicker to ever come through Arkansas, arguably the greatest specialist to ever come through Arkansas. And just 2 years later, you get I guess really a year later, because Jackson was a sophomore last season. So if you haven't watched, if you like special teams, you definitely need to keep an eye on this kid. He's got a big leg. Coles has him as a top 30 kicker in the country. So I'm glad you brought him up. He's definitely one of the next ones to watch. Anytime you get across midfield, then you're pretty much in a good position.
Look out.
Yeah, look out because he can hit it. So then on down to, I keep messing up here, to Arkadelphia and Camden Fairview. So this is one that I'm really intrigued by, Kevin, because you've got the Arkadelphia defense. Now, last year, we mentioned last week, they started off slow. Then you and Randy went and did the Sonic Blast, and then they just turned it on pretty much from that point forward. So Arkadelphia definitely has some pieces to replace on offense. I know they feel really good about their running backs position, and they got a couple of those. Kyle Reed leading that group. But defensively, Coach Shucker has talked about how he thinks that they're the best defense in Class 4A. They're going up against a Camden Fairview offense with Junie Atkins, of course, Trent Haygood, two of the better offensive players there, but they've got to replace a few key pieces on the offensive line. So that Arkadelphia defensive line against some new faces on that Camden Fairview offensive line is one I'm really looking forward to seeing.
Absolutely. Nakeeson Wimberly, we talked about him last week, and the Wimberly name in Class 4A getting a lot of attention. So, Coach Shucker's defense is the best in Class 4A, I believe. And you mentioned that you hit it right on the head. Junie Atkins at quarterback, Daryl Junie Atkins, and he's done a great job the last 2 years in replace of Martavius Thomas. Haygood may be one of the most underrated players that not many people talk about. The kid came in as a wide receiver last year, had over 900 yards receiving, really good yards per catch average. And they're like, hey, go play running back the last 5 or 6 weeks, and had over 1,000 yards, averaged almost 10 yards a carry. He had over 2,000 yards of total offense last year. So Arkadelphia, they gave up 43 points in this game last year. After that, they didn't allow much. Yeah, they lost Arkansas High. That's a 5A school. But they beat Nashville 44-6 and then only allowed 7 points to Mena. That's when they went on their run right there. So they'll wake up a little bit this year. They might come out a little slower on offense, but Camden Fairview I still think has the edge coming off that semifinal run last year, Kyle.
Then this is one I am really excited about because Kevin, I think people are severely sleeping on Greenbrier. Yes, in Class 5A, I love Parkview, I love Robinson, I love Harding Academy, but I think that Greenbrier is not getting the amount of attention paid to it that it should. I mean, you've got Randy Tribble, that's an established coach, been at Greenbrier since he left Harding in 2008, around that time. We remember what they did the last time they were in 5A. Had the best season in school history, went to the semifinals, lost to PA. And that was during PA's dominant run. So you get this Greenbrier team that's got a great offensive line. You do replace quarterbacks. You've got some of your skill spots back up against a Warren team that is going up against arguably the best offense in Class 4A.
Yeah, Jackson Denton and all of his merry men of receivers out there. Antonio Jordan leads the way, 6'4", about 215, 220, the typical Warren D1 prospect out there at wideout. So, Greenbrier, I think a lot of people are sleeping on them this year. They, no matter who you talk to, them and Farmington in the 5A West are the two that are going to be, playing for that top spot. But it's hard to, every time Greenbrier gets bumped up to that 6A level, it's really kind of tough on them. They belong in 5A. So I think they're in their sweet spot this year. I honestly think they're one of the top 4 or 5 teams in Class 5A with what Coach Tribble does. A lot of people forget some of the coaches that have been through there and the offenses that they've run in the past. They were the team that were going as fast as humanly possible. We played them when I was at Sylvan Hills my first year there. Went up there and we scored on the second play of the game and like, these guys ain't so tough. Next thing you know, they scored so fast that our defensive coordinator couldn't get the signs in. That's how fast they were going on offense. So, Cooper Wilcox was the quarterback last time they were in Class 5A. He's not there anymore. It'll be interesting to see. I like this matchup. This is a game that you don't think of in a preseason, but both these teams changing class or Greenbrier dropping classifications and caused scheduling to turn on its head a little bit. So kudos to Coach Tribble and Coach Embry for getting this one set up.
This next one between Glen Rose and Bauxite, I would say this is more along the lines of the Whitehall, Sheridan, Searcy, Batesville, and then what we'll be talking about with maybe like a Fayetteville, Cabot, trying to figure out where some of these teams are. With Fayetteville, Cabot, that we'll talk to in a second, you're trying to figure out where Cabot is. And that's kind of where you're at maybe with a Glen Rose in particular, just because they lost so much from that 2024 class. But you think about just the culture that's been set with the Keeners, and now Stephen has taken that program over in his second year. And then Bauxite, who I think they're my sleeper in Class 4A. And look, I know they're highly rated, but basically they're my pick that's not Arkadelphia or Warren in Class 4A. So Bauxite, a little bit more what they do have. Probably the highest expectations of the Caleb Perry era, I would say, against a mostly new look Glen Rose team that really will probably over the first 3 weeks as they continue to gel and play the games together, get used to playing together, that's kind of what we'll figure out more along with this Glen Rose team. But definitely a huge test here early on.
Yeah, and I know this is a game that our man Aaron Weatherford's really looking out for this week. And Glen Rose did they introduce some black uniforms this year? Is that what?
I believe I did see that. I think they've got a few different coordinations.
Yeah, they got some alternate uniforms. They got the inspiration from college football 25. So, it's going to be a little bit different. They had a really good run last year in Stephen Keener's first year. But, Bauxite, they played Forest City last week in a scrimmage. Take what you will out of that. Forest City, won, and I'd say, quote unquote, won that game. I don't think Bauxite really showed too much. They're not going to. But we know what they're going to do. It's going to be Marcus Wimberly is going to get the ball at certain times. They're going to throw the ball up and down the field, and he's going to play good defense. So I really like what Coach Perry's done with that program because they were coming off. They had Coach Patton there for a little while, and what he's done, what Coach Perry has done there is really gotten them to be a team to talk about in Class 4A. So it should be a good matchup. I expect Bauxite to pull it out with a lot of the experience they have coming back.
This was a close one last year. Walnut Ridge and East Poinsett County, one of the premier, especially small school, not only in Northeast Arkansas, NEA. I was trying to put those together, but really one of the small school matchups that you need to watch across the state. This was a really close game, a 4-point matchup last year. Walnut Ridge, they bring back 16, 17 starters from an 8-win team. Meanwhile, EPC, they're having to replace Omar McCuston. You think about Dennis Gaines. Of course, Jacob Gaines, his little brother's still there. They're having to replace a lot of their key positions. So I think, like what we were saying with Glen Rose, this will be a big-time opportunity for the defending 2A champion EPC to prove something against the Walnut Ridge team that we expect big things from in Class 3A.
Yeah, and Walnut Ridge needs this game. They need this game to show that Coach Blake's team is one of the top teams in Class 3A. Kyle, how about that 3-3A conference? And I know I've talked about this on some other shows and everything, but you got Rivercrest dropping in there. Newport, they've been the beneficiary of Amani Wren coming back from Greenwood. That marriage didn't last very long. It got annulled pretty quick. And then Keandre Barber. So if those guys can go out and put together, 10 games, Newport could, very well win that conference. But, with Enrique Perez over 1,600 yards, 16 or 17 touchdowns last year, you've got a backfield that put up over 2,000 last year, and they're probably going to put up over 2,500, 2,800 yards this year. So I expect Walnut Ridge to come out, really run the ball. They're not going to, a lot of these games, you get the ball flying all over the place, thinking of Greenwood, a lot of the 7A West schools, not much of a run game. If you want the old ground and pound, it's not 3 and 4 yards of cloud of dust. It's more like 7, 8 yards in a cloud of dust. with both of these schools. So really looking forward to see what Walnut Ridge puts on at EPC last year. It was a close game, 28-20, or it was a close game. Yeah, 34-30, excuse me. Walnut Ridge beat Highland in their first game last year. But, yeah, high-scoring game, really close. I think Walnut Ridge expands that a little bit this year.
Sylvan Hills at Maumelle. Of course, both of these are will be on the Natural State Sports Network on the Sylvan Hills and Maumelle networks, if that's not confusing or anything. But I always like this matchup, K-Bo. You think I think it was 2 years ago in Maupin's first year, they came back in this game. Maumelle did, so that they got that first big victory, and then kind of fell apart after the first non-conference games. They kind of fell apart there towards the back end, but this is always, for the most part, a pretty good matchup. And Sylvan Hills has as much to prove as anybody after a 0 for season. Meanwhile, Maumelle has about as much hype as anybody with all the transfers that they brought in. So great test for both of these two teams. Very familiar with each other, as I've said, have played pretty much since the COVID year, I think, to begin the season. So I'm really looking for just some of that progress with Sylvan Hills. Can they finish drives? Can they stop anybody? This Maumelle team is going to be tough to stop if they're clicking on all cylinders. So what will Maumelle do with all these guys? Will they mesh together immediately, and or will Sylvan Hills show immense improvement from their season last year?
Sylvan Hills coming, J.J. Hooley, 16 starters back total, 9 on the defense that you were mentioning that didn't really stop anybody last year. So the biggest thing for Sylvan Hills early of what we've seen out of this game is, can they limit turnovers? I remember when Coach Hills first, when his tenure at Sylvan Hills, they put the ball on the ground a lot. You see that in a triple option offense quite a bit. So if they can limit turnovers, they're going to have a chance. But on paper, like we said, Maumelle is going to be the deeper team. Andrew Bjork can play running back, but he'll start at quarterback, but he'll line up at running back. He's 6 foot, 200. He's a really good athlete, really good with the ball in his hand. So they can move him around. That's going to be key. Getting a couple other guys, through the transfer portal, so to speak. I know my man Blake Pizon really likes that term. So, Coach Maupin, love the guy, what he's done at Maumelle. He's made them into a contender in Class 5A. So, Sylvan Hills really need to come out, establish an identity. What are they going to look like on offense? How are they going to be on defense? And I think it should be a closer game this year.
And Fayetteville and Cabot. Now, this one was really interesting last year, Kevin, because Cabot had some of probably the best all-around special teams, top-rated long snapper, top-rated punter. But they had, 3 in a row snaps over some Dugwood's head, which, really was pretty much the main thing that did that. Now, Fayetteville was a much better team than Cabot was last year, and likely, no offense to it, but probably will be this year as well. I don't know how much that gap is going to be because I haven't seen Garrett Odom much at quarterback, and that's going to be a big thing. But I think in this one, anytime, and you and I have talked about this, anytime Scott Reed is leading your club, you can't count them out. I don't care really what the situation, especially at the new part. Now, if this were like week 6, week 7 and further, it's different. But this is when everybody is starting fresh. So it's at their house at Panther Stadium. So I think that this could actually be maybe a more competitive matchup than some expect it to be.
Yeah, I think I picked Cabot last year to go up and beat Fayetteville, and at least we know what Fayetteville did. Drake Lindsay took offense to that, and I think he lit them up for a little bit. So it's going to be tough. Fayetteville got some really good move-ins, as we spoke about. Garrett Odom coming in, he's got P5, P4, whatever, Division I college offers, and they look good last week on offense. Scott Reed, they have to replace a lot on defense. Cabot's always been run the ball, play defense. And even under Scott Reed, they've done a good job of doing that. So they're going to have to figure it out pretty quick to replace 9 starters on the defensive side of the ball. This game may not tell us much about either team going forward. It's like you said, week 6, 7, we might have a better idea on this game. Fayetteville, they're going to come down here looking to keep rolling off of that. It's funny. The more I talk about Fayetteville, the more I think about the conversation you and I had 3 or 4 years ago about can Coach Casey Dick win a state championship with this program?
Yeah, I'm on the record with a lot of hot takes on that.
Yeah, so, and I was right there with you. I said, look, it's time for them to put up or shut up, and they made a lot of us shut up. So Really looking forward to seeing what product they put out there. Jason Delamar, over almost 1,500 yards receiving last year. He was the top receiver in the state. Really dynamic. So I think they're going to move him around a little bit this year, get the ball in his hands a few different ways. So expect Fayetteville to come out on top of this one.
And next we've got West Plains, Missouri at Mountain Home. Now, I don't know how big or like how competitive or good of a game this is going to be, but West Plains is a quality program, and Coach Airy at Mountain Home that we raved about last week, he used to coach this team, so I'm sure that probably had a little bit to do with it. So always love to see, and I threw this in there because I love those interstate matchups, and somehow I don't know how Parkview and Melissa didn't make this graphic, but we'll mention them here at the end once we get past Mark Tree Newport. But I'm really interested to see this because, again, we know that Mountain Home has had those seasons where they start off really strong. They finish maybe really strong, but then in that West, they've been tied up with the best of the best with back-to-back weeks when Lake Hamilton was at its – I don't know if I'd say at its best, but it was one of the premier teams in the West before their down season last year. Also Greenwood, Little Rock Christian, PA kind of in that span. So now that conference is – not to say that it's gotten – worse by any means, adding Shiloh Christian and Southside, but you're curious to know what they can do in that middle part of the season just because of the shakeup in the West. But I am really interested to see how they start off here against West Plains, Coach Airy's former team.
I do too. And they looked good last week against CAC, I think 56-21. Now, don't take all that to mean that the starters scored 56 points. But, yeah, they looked really good last week. This is always a team that you and I really kind of keep our eye on. The Bombers come out and, really make a difference towards the end of the season, okay? Can they all put it together for an entire 10-game stretch? The 6A West, like you mentioned, it's going to be tough this year. You got teams like Fort Smith Southside that are dropping down. So it's going to be a little bit tougher. Lake Hamilton's going to be a little bit better. See what Van Buren's got. But, Mountain Home, we'll see what they can do this year.
And then Newport at Mark Tree, another one in the small schools NEA matchup that's going to be one of the best around the state. Newport, as you mentioned, they got Wren back from Greenwood, had a cup of coffee over there, made his way back across the state. And then Keandre Barker, I mean, he's been at a lot of places and hopefully now has why I guess he will because it's his senior season, but now is settled. Of course, we don't know that situation. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. The amount of places because he has been at multiple schools. So hopefully everything works out there. And they are going to be, they always have athletes, but I think they're extra stacked this year, Newport is. And then Mark Tree, they've got a lot of athletes as well from that semifinal. They've graduated some of their top receivers, I think a few guys on defense, but they've got Ken Carter back. They've got Brown back. They've got Jonah Walker back. So they've got a lot of those top dogs that really helped them get to being one of the final four teams in Class 2A last year. So this could be a track meet if we could call it that.
Yeah, you look out there, and Kenyon Carter is one of the top quarterbacks in the state. I don't care what classification you talk about. Athletic, really good on the field leadership. So, while they do have to replace a few pieces, this is going to be a really good test for them. Really good home game to start out the season. Newport, you talked about, Barker and Wren coming back. They got Crite, who had a potential 1,000-yard season this year as well. His older brother, Kristen Crite, was a headache for people back 2012, 2013. So, some of those younger brothers are coming through now for Newport. So it's just a matter of, hey, how long can you hold them on a leash? See what Mark Tree's got. Good time for them to start the season with Newport coming to town.
And then before we touch on some of the ones from just the other non-conference matchups to take a peek at, I do want to make sure that we talk about Melissa and Parkview. So this is going to be Parkview traveling down to Melissa's multi-million-dollar complex. I've been doing some research on them, Kevin, and one thing that I have noticed is they have got some big dudes on the offensive line. They've got an offensive lineman committed to OU. They've got a junior that is, I believe, offered by Texas. Pretty much all their guys, they're huge. And I think just about all that I saw had offers. So, these guys can play. They've got a new quarterback that actually transferred in from Hoover, Alabama. Hoover, Alabama went 5-7 last year.
Worst year they've had in the past 30 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, and I believe he started there. Noah something was his name. I just started looking at it Sunday night. So I'm still pretty fresh in it, but they're going to have him. He's got multiple offers. I know Ole Miss is one of the offers he has. Purdue, couple of other D1s. So, I mean, this is a Melissa squad that's kind of been – I was reading their Dave Campbell's, basically the Hootens of Texas, and I was reading that the other day, and it appears that they did lose a lot of skill players, which could be why the quarterback moved in. But, man, with this offensive line, as long as you get some speed, which obviously Parkview has speed as well, I think that's something that we're going to find out really early is how is this game going to be in the trenches? Because you know that Parkview skill player for skill player can match up with just about anybody. So how will it be in the trenches? I think we're going to find that out really early.
Yeah, and if some of those guys are on the other side for Melissa, what does their D-line look at? Are they going to be able to put pressure on Murphy back there, make him make decisions with the football? I think that's a thing that, a lot of teams, they can maybe have a little bit of success at. You're not going to out-athlete Parkview. You're not. But if you can put pressure on the quarterback, keep them within the hash marks, I think that's a real big thing. Because if you let Montario Elston, Cam Settles, Marion Robinson, if you let them get outside the hash marks, it's, you can't catch them. So that's going to be the key for a lot of teams this year. Should be a great game, and looking forward to seeing that on the Parkview Sports Network.
And then, yeah, that's right. You can listen to it on the Parkview Sports Network live, I believe is what Will said. And then later on, you can watch it. Yeah, because they have the rights down there. So now going into, and for the sake of time, we're not going to break down every single one of these, but we'll just kind of talk about some of the top matchups that we have going into I guess not just going into week 0, but throughout the non-conference. So we'll just kind of touch on this list, Kevin. We'll take a gander at this. And first off, Junction City at Carlisle in that third slot right there. I want to reiterate that we being the Buzz, myself, RJ Hawk, and Josh Neighbors on the call will be at Carlisle in week 1 for this one. I think they're honoring all of the teams. So Carlisle's had multiple teams that has gone to the state final. They just haven't had a team that's won it. And I think that they are going to honor all those runner-up teams. And we all know Junction City, one of the top dogs of not just small schools, but overall in Arkansas of the 21st century. So I'm really looking forward to that one. Parkview Mall Melwin, talking about figuring out where teams are. Parkview's going to go down and play Melissa. Melissa's going to try to beat up on them, and I know Maumelle is hoping that they do that because they have upset on their minds. So I think that those are two that really stick out to me. Benton at Harding Academy is another one that I really like. I love how Harding Academy, when they were in 3 and 4A, they were playing 5A Valley View. Now they're playing in 5A, they're playing 6A schools. That's how you're supposed to do it. I love it. Neil Evans doesn't really care. He just wants to go out there and play the best brand of football that they can play. They don't care what class they're in. I love how they're embracing that. But the one that probably nobody's talking about, Texas High at Fayetteville. That one's going to be a good one. Also, too, I love the Bentonville playing Lee Summit. I believe Lee Summit was the runner-up to Rockhurst.
Rockhurst last year.
Which Bentonville had previously played Rockhurst. Yeah. So those are kind of my 5 that really jump off the page there. Of course, I'm looking forward to see how Shiloh responds to the thumping that they took from Little Rock Christian, or to how
Little Rock Christian responds. Yeah.
Little Rock, because the other 2002 was the other year around.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how Little Rock Christian responds to this. And then Madison Ridgeland, PA is always interesting. So out of those right there, just kind of talk about what you like.
Yeah, MSA is interesting because of the issue they had this year during the 7-on-7. That should be interesting. That wasn't against. Yeah. So what happens with that? These two have played each other the last 4 years. So it's not, and then maybe before that, I know Coach Kelly coached against them as well. So looking forward to that one. Junction City and Carlisle, we're going to be there for that one as well. I know everybody's really excited about it. I've already talked to a couple of coaches down there. Gary Wilson's second year, coming off 11-2 finish for the Bison last year. Ozark and Boonville is always a big one, and I know our man Porter Hayes is hoping that Ozark can return the favor this year against Boonville. The Bearcats, they're going to be one of the top teams in 3A. Ozark looking to win their conference once again. If they're going to be one of the top teams in Class 4A. I'm with you on the Benton Harding Academy. That's a really good schedule right there by Neil Evans, stepping up and playing them along with Marion. So they're playing 6A schools. And the last one was Bentonville and Lee Summit North. Now, the way Missouri likes to do, they do sectionals. So Lee Summit North has won their sectional the last couple of years. They went 11-2 last year, 12-2 the year before that. They did graduate their quarterback who threw for over 2,500 yards last year. but they're still going to be good. They play up there with Rockhurst, Liberty North, Lee Summit. Their other Lee Summit schools hasn't been as good, but LSN, as they call them up there, around the KC area, is going to be a really good matchup for Bentonville. Bentonville always goes and plays some of them Kansas City area schools to kind of get a idea of what's going on with their team for the year. So really good games throughout the year. I'm really looking forward to spread out over these next 4 weeks.
I wrote down a couple of wild cards, and I'm kicking myself because I didn't write down when they are. So Prescott Salem, don't they play on Thursday?
Yep.
Okay, so they're week 0. That's one that I had to because Prescott, of course, the favorite in Class 3A. Salem, they just tend to win
the conference.
Yeah, I mean, they tend to win, and they just don't get talked about quite like that. I think last year, what was it? I think that they had their best season in like over a decade or something. So, and they got Caden. I love Caden Brink, Cabo.
Yeah, the 2-3A conference.
Yeah. So, really good team there. The really solid season that they had. So, I think that they might give again. Being the early season, this is the time of year you want to get Prescott. Now, Prescott is hungry, but you want to get them this time of year. Bentonville West Cabot, I think, also has a chance to be another one. And a super, super wild card is Sheridan and Hot Springs Lakeside. And I say that just because, look, I think that Sheridan, and look, I'll say this on the record, I think that they might be a little bit overhyped right now just because of who is leading them. I'll say it. I don't mean that derogatory, but again, Coach Kelly has proven himself. And that's why, I say that out of respect.
The program hasn't.
Exactly. So if any coach is going to turn around a program like what Sheridan has endured, it's him. But I don't want anybody to mistake me here. I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying that in an insulting manner. But I think that if Kyle Sutherland was coaching that team, then and I would have had maybe 10 years experience, then we probably wouldn't be putting Sheridan where some people are. Not disrespecting any other outlets. That's just kind of how I feel about it.
Yep. I agree 100%. So it's not easy to instill a winning culture overnight. And
Absolutely.
That's basically what Coach Kelly's done. He's been on for, months now, but it's hard to turn around a program in months. There's a lot of stuff that he likes to do, and it takes time. How long does it take to develop a habit? The kids have been working out on their own on Sundays and things like that. All of that looks good from aesthetics point of view. But once you get on the field, the lights come on, it's a lot different.
No doubt. As we close it out here, that's one thing I did want to touch on. Kevin, I didn't mention that I was going to say this at the end of the show to you, but, one of the things that and I'm not calling out anybody or anything or any of that nature, but I want to encourage everybody to read the things that you see, listen to the things, the podcast or radio shows, because there's a lot of stuff going on during football season. It's a lot easier to cover than maybe say basketball, say baseball, say softball. I want to encourage everybody to listen to as much content as you can, because, you might have a lot of the same stuff as far as topics. Look, great teams demand coverage, right? But Cabo and I might talk about the Melissa Parkview game, but we might have a different opinion on it than somebody else at another outlet. So with the beginning of the season, with the beginning of a new school year, this is not set enough. We do have we work together. I feel like as media as a whole, regardless of what outlet you're with, I feel like that we do that pretty well. But to an extent, I don't know that we praise each other enough as we should.
Great. Yeah.
So I want to just take a little bit of time as we close this out here to, don't think because, it's this outlet. Oh, well, they said something that I didn't like a while back, or that. Just support everybody. We've seen some of that this week. And so I do want to just say that I read other people's stuff because look,
Absolutely.
that's how we learn. So
we talk to other guys during the week, and, Fearless Friday does a phenomenal job on Friday nights getting the scores out better than just about anybody. Hootens does a great job end-to-end coverage on their video, of course, their write-ups on the website every week. Sam Lane and our boy ET over at the Demazet, they do a great job every week of getting their top 6 out. The previews they had this year were on point, covering every little thing, players to watch, storylines for each classification. So, I'm in agreement with you right there. Doesn't matter the major news outlets or any off the wall, whatever. Some of them may get out there a little bit on their opinions. That's their right. They have the right to do that. So, We appreciate everybody that comes, listens to us and talks to us. And when we run into you out in the public, we're more than happy to talk to you about it anytime. So looking forward to another great season. And with, you, Kyle, doing Arkansas Preps Weekly, again, this is really kind of the first time you and I have gotten to do football together and talk about it and, being involved as much as we are. So we're looking to take this thing, to even higher levels, and we just want to put out a great product.
Yep, that's right. And I was thinking about that just actually as we finished last week. I said, we're about to start a new season. We're about to start not just a new season, but we've started a new school year. So let's start it off right, and let's try to support each other because, again, there's a lot of stuff out there, and you're going to see some of the same teams on paper and all these different, on publications and all these different things. But we're looking forward to it. I couldn't be more excited to get this thing rolling. But that will do it for this week of Arkansas Preps Weekly. Next week, we will, of course, recap all of week 0, the top storylines from there, and then anything else that might come our way. But other than that, that will do it for episode, I believe this is 27 for Kevin Bohonnon and all of us here at Natural State Sports. My name's Kyle Sutherland. We'll catch you next week.